Hey people, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Becca. I film from Kaduna, Nigeria. You know this already. On this channel, I talk about friendship, personal development, books, and stories. Today, we will be talking about a true life story, the story of Jeffery Dahmer. This same story has been adapted into several documentaries, and recently it was made into a Netflix limited series. To me, the story is basically about cannibalism and splanchnophilia fueled by pure negligence. So I will be sharing 10 personal, exclusive reactions based on the Netflix publication, the Netflix story, and the original story itself. Cannibalism is the eating of human flesh by another human, while splanchnophilia is a mental disorder where someone is sexually aroused by human flesh and internal organs. Again, the Jeffery Dahmer story is a true life story which broke in 1991, to which there are already existing documentaries on it. However, Netflix made a recent limited series on the same story, and this series smashed the Netflix week 1 record for most hours viewed. The true life story of Jeffery Dahmer, an American serial killer from Milwaukee who drugged and killed 17 people, most of them black and gay. If you haven't seen the movie, I just say spoiler alert. Also, there are maybe gory details that I might give, so you want? Yeah. After the Netflix release of this story, 3 major reactions rolled in. 1 from the families of the victims, 2 from the black community, majorly the Milwaukee community, and the journalist who broke the story in 1991, Anne Schwartz. For the family of the victims, they are simply asking if this story is necessary at this point because it opens up the wound again. A particular scene is regarded as being extremely wild because the Netflix series recaptured the moment a victim's sister had an emotional breakdown in court, and they recreated that scene word for word, action for action. The black community feels like every black, especially black Americans, should boycott the movie because it puts them in some sort of light, capturing them as being oppressed, voiceless, disregarded, maltreated, and the fact that most of the victims were black, they just feel like, okay, you know what, don't watch this thing. The Milwaukee community, however, feel that the movie is putting them up in the world's eye as a terrible community. They do not appreciate it. They don't want the world to get to know them as this kind of community, a community where somebody got away with this for a very long time before he was finally caught. They felt they have done enough documentaries on this story. Why are you coming up with this story again? Is there really a need for it? Then the journalist who broke the story, Anne Schwartz. Previously, she had published 2 best-selling books about this early on while she was working as a crime reporter with the Milwaukee Journal. She's saying the filmmakers actually sacrificed accuracy for the sake of drama. The dramatist in me is saying drama is larger than life. Drama is action twice done. Drama is an exaggerated reality. And when we're dealing with historical materials, maybe historical figures, historical events in the past, even real life events, and your story is based on a true life narration, the dramatist, now the filmmakers, are free to interpret or represent. Represent meaning they can choose to portray the event verbatim or almost verbatim, action for action, word for word, or they can choose to interpret. So when you're interpreting, you can choose to add more details to some scenes or tweak some actions just to pass across your message effectively. That is allowed, and some filmmakers can even use both representation and interpretation, which is really allowed, right? However, let's take a look at the things she mentioned were not accurately captured. One, as against the strong smell, that stench coming out from Jeffrey's room being likened to human blood, the smell from a stale blood. Anne says no, that is incorrect. That rather it was at the time a strong chemical smell, that it was the acid that he was using to bleach their skin, to preserve the skin, to preserve the flesh, that actually took over the entire place. So it was not really human blood like a murder scene, but a strong chemical odor. Also, Miss Glenda Cleveland, who tried reporting the case severally but often ignored, is portrayed in the Netflix series to be a next door neighbor, but Anne maintains that late Miss Glenda, who died in 2011, God rest her soul, actually lived in a separate building from that of Jeffrey's. In her words, in the first 5 minutes of the episode, you have Glenda Cleveland knocking on his door. That is on Jeffrey's door. None of these happened. She was never that close to her. She didn't knock. She never knocked on the door. She was not living in the same apartment, as Jeffrey. Okay. Now, I don't think people generally care about such accuracies. Such accuracies, such details of whether she stayed in the same house or stayed in the next house, or whether she knocked on the door. But we sincerely care about Miss Glenda actually putting a call across to the police and getting ignored. And we also care about the accuracies of Jeffrey Dahmer himself, whether he committed all of those crimes. I think those kind of details, whether he really committed the crime or not, is the kind of accuracies that we all look forward to. But if you are interested in reading a book to confirm if the filmmakers actually stayed true to the event, surrounding Jeffrey Dahmer, you can get a book on Amazon. It's there. This book she also updated last year, October. After 30 years, she re-interviewed some of the major people, the key people she had spoken to way back 1991. These families of the victims, she needed to check where they are today. What's the effect on them? 30 years gone, and what do they feel about the incidents? Yeah. Now, here are my exclusive reactions based on the true life event itself. 10 of them. Come with me. 1. If something doesn't feel right, trust your freaking gut. The very first scene got me on the edge of the seat, guys. Dahmer invites this random gay guy home, and from the door he could perceive a strong stench, and he also got suspicious about his weird behaviors. Honestly, if you watch this series, you can tell that Dahmer is actually really weird, really weird guy. Also, every time he drugs his victims, he will give them whether beer or coke, soda, depending on what they drink. Most of them actually suspected what the drink, he's giving to them, his behavior and the look of the drink, but they'll still go ahead and take the drink. No, if something doesn't feel right, then it really isn't right. May God help us, keep us away from evil men. Amen. Number 2, the effect of a broken home is really crazy. Why shout in front of kids? Dahmer's parents were always fighting, always quarreling, always at each other's tails in front of the kids. But at the time, David, Dahmer's brother, was still really young. Dahmer was the one who was about 7 or 8, and he took all of this in. People are not paying attention to the things their kids do because they are too busy fighting each other. Some people don't deserve to be parents. For instance, Dahmer was obsessed with internal organs. How didn't they see that? The father himself will go with him to gather dead animals, animals seen by the roadsides. Then he will bring the animal home, the dead animal. He will take it to his garage, and himself and Dahmer, who was so young then, like age 8, they will then dissect the dead animal and bring out the internal organs and he got obsessed with it. There was a time he attended practical in school when he was in high school, and they used pig. They dissected pig. And Dahmer couldn't even wait for the instructions of the teacher. He went ahead to bring out the heart. The teacher had to tell him, Dahmer, don't touch the heart yet. But no, Dahmer had brought out the heart. After that exercise, Dahmer approached the teacher and says, teacher, please, can you give me one pig? I want to take home to further dissect. A fresh pig, not even the one he worked on. The teacher was shocked. He gave Dahmer the animal, and Dahmer, not knowing that this thing doesn't sit right, approached one of his classmates and says, guy, do you mind coming with me? Let's go home together so we could further dissect this extra pig that I collected from our class teacher. The guy felt really irritated. He was like, no, I'm not coming with you now. Go, really? Wow, no, of course not. Dahmer felt disappointed, like, oh, why doesn't this guy want to come with me? But he went home with it. Getting home, he keeps this in his bag, and his father looks at him and says, what's that stench? What's that smell? And he says, oh, I have this extra pig I took from school. I'm going to dissect it. I guess at some point he just really started imagining doing it to human beings. Number 3, his father wouldn't listen to him. Jeff Dahmer's father shut him up, and just kept sending him off to be a great person externally without tackling the internal part. The first time the family actually breaks apart in the next big series, the mother abandons him. She lives with David, leaves him in the home alone. The father didn't come home. He stayed 3 months away, so he lived by himself 3 months. 3 months by himself. At around 17, he was 17 and lived all by himself. His father was in a hotel living with his girlfriend. And by the time he comes home, he himself is surprised. Ooh, you've been all alone by yourself. Your mother is so stupid. Your mother is a very foolish woman. She leaves you alone. You are such a young boy. What about you, sir? Where were you? What have you been doing? Anyway, Jeff decides to narrate to his father how he's feeling internally and how he feels something is not right about him, how he feels there is something really wrong. And the father shuts him up and say, you know what you need is to go back to school. What you need is to do this, is to do that. And he gets back to school. And he's not doing well academically, and he is sent away from school because his CGPA is so terrible. And he's out of school again. And the father looks at him again. Oh, okay, you know what? I think you'll be good for the army. And sends him to the army. While in the army, he started working in the medical department. He was trained on different drugs and their users. And this guy, Jeff Dahmer, actually used this drug on someone in the army and sexually molested the person. Of course, he's sent away from the army once again. And what does the father do? He's angry, but never really sits to say, talk to me, what is your problem? Or takes him to a psychologist, a psychiatrist to say, what is wrong with your head? He finally takes him to his own mother, that is Jeff's grandmother. And that is where he got all of the will to do and undo. Number 4, we cover up for our loved ones as a form of affection. Please, I don't know. Help me analyze this. Grandma knew something is wrong somewhere, but she does nothing. At the point where the immigrants whom he almost killed escaped, and the police were in the house, Grandma covered up. Grandma, for a while, has been suspicious. From the many sounds, the stench, and this day, there was this particular day, Grandma sees a drunken man, of course, drugged guy. And Jeff says, oh, it's alcohol. He is drunk. But grandma suspects, she feels, something ain't right here. So she sits right there until the next morning when this guy, still obviously high, was actually taken home. Grandma knew, but it just felt like it's a way of affection not to let your loved ones go. Also, at the end, when Jeffrey Dahmer got arrested and was about to be prosecuted for all of the damages he had done, his father pleads with him to convince the judge about his mental status at the point of, the atrocities. He says, if you claim you are insane, you will spend the rest of your life in a hospital, a mental hospital, rather than in the prison. But of course, at that point, Jeffrey Dahmer knew better. He said, you know what? I am done. I was not insane when I was doing this. And the father was even angry that he was not ready to help himself. He was angry that Jeffrey was not agreeing to, plead insanity. Number 5, we need better systems. Jeffrey Dahmer was placed in custody. When he was prosecuted, when he was caught after sexually molesting that immigrant, he was placed in custody for 1 year, but nothing was done for him to help him psychologically. So many people even come out of this kind of situation worse than they went in. And Dahmer is one of those people. Imagine being left alone most of the times. When the father went to pick him up at the correctional center, Lionel Dahmer, his father, asked him, did you have a chance to speak with a psychiatrist or a psychologist? Were you taken to the hospital, And Dahmer was like, I was left alone all of the time, all the entire year. And Lionel Dahmer couldn't help it. He broke down crying, really. Number 6, justice can be so late sometimes. It's like that saying, 99 days for the thief, 1 day for the owner. That's so far. 1 day for the owner, 99 days for the thief. That doesn't cut it, nah. Imagine Dahmer, Jeffrey. He killed at least 17 people, mostly black young men, one of whom was 14, with the most tragic story of all, because he already escaped out. The young boy, the 14-year-old, ran out while drugged. Because Jeffrey left home to go get something down the street. The young boy ran out, really. And while he was standing in front of the house, Glenda Cleveland saw him and pleaded with the police. The police came around. She pleaded with police to take him away. But when Jeffrey arrived, he claimed that, this is my boyfriend. We are gay, And the police were like, okay, you know what? Okay, they can't judge someone for their sexual orientation, and nothing was done about it. Can you imagine that they allowed Jeffrey go back into the house with that boy, and that was how that boy got killed eventually? One of the characters in the Netflix story, Reverend J.C. Jackson, said, this is a metaphor into the entire system. This story and the systems portrayed represent the underserved communities, bad policing, voices of the voiceless, the oppressed, and so on. Number 7, some of us won't bother to lift a finger to help people who don't conform with our standards and beliefs. It's almost like they deserve whatever form of injustices they are faced with. Because most of the victims of Jeffrey Dahmer were gay. Some people couldn't imagine that Reverend Jesse Jackson was helping out. You're forgetting that injustice to one is injustice to all. Humanity should come first. Number 8, actions should be proactive rather than reactive, especially as parents and teachers. Again, some things can be freaking too late. Jeffrey Dahmer's father, at the end, accept it was his fault because he had those fantasies of killing people too, when he was much younger. And he felt, okay, he probably might have given Jeffrey some of his genes. And remember, it was with his father that he learned how to dissect, a living thing like animals. Also, I think his father also accepted the fact that he was an absent father, and he must have introduced him to opening up human beings based on the dead raccoons they were opening up at their garage when he was much younger. Number 9, people see gains in everything. Can you imagine that? While in prison, Jeffrey Dahmer gained fans. People were supporting him. They sent letters and monies to him in exchange for autographs. Also, his father, Lionel Dahmer, wrote a book. Doesn't stop at that. Some people published comics. And at some point, when Tony's mom, that is the one deaf black guy who also got killed by Dahmer, when the mom reported to the police, she was told to sue, to go for a civil lawsuit and then get some money from it too. Can you imagine how people just want to live off this? Oh my. Number 10, in the end, while some people move on, mainly sympathizers, others live with the trauma, especially victims of the family. Now the question is, did he believe that God has really forgiven him before he died? Did his family get to forgive him? When eventually did the victims' families heal? Or did they actually kept pretending like some of the characters in the movie suggested? It's really, really, really a sad event. Really sad. Again, I just hope that God keeps us away from evil, and that God purifies our hearts for us not to turn into monsters. Thank you so much for watching this video. Kindly like the video, share it to others, drop your comment in the comment section. I would love to read from you. See you in my next video.